I didn't work on any portrait drawings this week. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that I've been working at creating some brushes for another class that I want to do, and some digital brushes for a program called Procreate that I work with a lot. And so I didn't get anything new, so I decided I'd show you something old that I've done. This is a digital piece that I did. Several months back now, and obviously it's a rose. I did this on the program called Art Rage, and I really enjoy drawing roses, but I did a whole bunch of those. I did about 10 or more. And that was really how I began to get better at drawing roses. And that's why I wanted to show you this picture today. If there's something that you really want to get better at drawing, maybe a particular subject, maybe you like to draw cars, or maybe you want to draw people or faces like I'm trying to do, or whatever, then one of the best ways to get better at it is to keep drawing it. In other words, don't draw a whole bunch of different things, but focus on that one kind of subject for a while. I drew rose picture after rose picture after rose picture. Now I'm drawing face after face after face. I don't know what I'll go to after that, but it'll be a process of learning. So I hope you will do some drawing, do some painting, and send me some pictures of what you're doing. Now, what are we going to talk about today? Well, today's lesson is, whoops, I got two slides showing there, all about space. And it corresponds to art class lesson number 7. So that's, if you have the DVDs, it's the second DVD and the third lesson on that DVD. And if you have the downloads, then it's it's volume 2, and it's the third lesson in volume 2. So it would be lesson number 7, and it has the same title. And in that lesson, our teacher, Pat Nepley, teaches us about positive and negative space. And that's a really important concept in art. Now, remember at the beginning, I said we were going to be learning the basic elements of art. And we started with line, and then we went to shape. And the third element that we're talking about this week is space. And space is, again, it is kind of what you think of when you think of space, but in art and in photography, it has kind of a different meaning. So let me show you a few illustrations of positive and negative space. Here's one. There's a pumpkin sitting on top of a post. So what is the positive space? The positive space is the pumpkin itself and the post. That's the object that you're drawing. It's what we would call it's solid. It's the thing that you're focusing on. Everything around is what we would call the negative space. So all of this space in behind and around the pumpkin is negative space. Okay, let me show you another one. This one's a little bit more challenging. Let me turn off the pumpkin here. Okay, positive and negative space. I'm going to give you a second or two to think about it. And what would you say is the positive space? Well, if you said the rocks, you're right. But I would also add that the table that the rocks are on looks like an old outdoor picnic table or something. That would be positive space too. The negative space would be all of this background space. Now, in a little while, I'm going to show you how when you're using space to draw, how even this table here could in a fashion be considered negative space. But right now, positive space is the object. Think something solid. Negative space is the space around the object. Okay, now here's one that's a little bit more challenging. Whoa, some clouds. I took these outside of our house around July 4th. Had some just beautiful clouds that were going with a big thunderstorm. But it was right at sunset, and I just really liked that. So here, what's the positive space? Well, the positive space is the clouds themselves. The negative space is the sky around the clouds. But here's the thing, and here's a little gap in there too. That's negative space. If I were using negative space to help me draw, I would see more negative space than just this space around the clouds. I would start to see, well, I would see this as negative space, because here I'm drawing like this shape, and I'm seeing these clouds, but I'm doing this darker part here. Some of these other darker parts I would actually treat as negative space. So I'm going to show you how that works in just a minute. But just to clarify in your mind, there are two kinds of space in art, and it also is true in photography: positive and negative space. And now we're going to learn how negative space particularly can help you draw what you see. Remember, that's the focus of our drawing lessons early on, is learning how to draw what we see. Now, before we go on, I'm going to show you a picture. You may have seen this picture before. It's kind of made the rounds, and it's fairly well known. But if you haven't, then I'm going to ask you to think for a second when you see it. Ask you, what are you seeing? And there'll be two possibilities. And I'm not going to tell you what those are yet, but I'm going to show you the image, and then you think about what it is that you're seeing. Okay, are you ready? Okay, here we go. Okay, got a good look at it? What did you see? People see usually one of two things. They will either see an old lady with, it looks like a scarf over her head and a feather in her hair, and maybe she's wearing an old raggedy coat. Did you see that? Other people will look at this and they will see a very attractive young lady who is wearing a fur coat and is looking away from the picture. And she also has some kind of a scarf, or maybe it's a veil over her head. Which did you see? Did you see the old lady, or did you see the young, beautiful lady? Now I'm going to point them out so you can see each, depending on what you saw. All right, first of all, I'm going to show you the outline of the old lady. Okay, here is her hair, and here is her nose, and here's her mouth, and that's her chin, and that's her eye, and there's another eyelash and kind of a little bag below her eye, and that's her scarf. Okay, if you didn't see the old lady before, do you see her now? Okay, if all you saw was the young lady, well, where do we see that? Well, you have to look at it a little bit differently. Here we have her profile. That's the front of her face going down. That's her chin. This is like a necklace that she's wearing, and this is the top of her dress. And then here's her eyelash, and that would still be part below her eye. But here, this would be her ear, and this is her hair, and again, a very fancy kind of a feather, and then I guess it's kind of a veil. And here she's got obviously a fur on. So either you saw a young lady or you saw an old lady. And it doesn't really matter which. But once I showed you the other one, did you see what I was showing you? And can you see it now? Can you kind of shift back and forth and look and say, oh yeah, I see the young lady. Oh yeah, now I see the old lady. That's what I'm going for right now. It's what sometimes is called a cognitive shift. It means you're seeing something, but then you see it from a different angle, as it were, or you see it in a different way. This is how a lot of optical illusions work, and they kind of play tricks on your brain. So all of that is to tell you that in learning how to draw with negative space, you want to learn how to kind of kick in that cognitive shift and see things a little bit differently. I'm going to give you a real practical illustration that comes from when I was a kid. And what it was back when I was, I don't know, 9, 10, 11, 12, I was infatuated with Superman. And I also liked to draw. And I really, really wanted to draw that diamond-shaped S letter shield that was on, the front of Superman's costume or uniform, or I don't know what you call what a superhero wears, but his outfit. You remember, if you've ever seen anything related to Superman, you know what I'm talking about. It's that iconic S letter. And I tried and I tried and I tried, and I could get the diamond because that was pretty easy, but I just couldn't draw that S to save my life. And then one day when I was looking at it, I realized that I didn't actually have to draw the S. If I drew the shapes around the S, then I would end up with the same effect. Now, I'm going to show you what I mean. And unfortunately, because Superman's logo is under copyright and I don't want to get DC Comics mad at me, I'm going to have to use the Y. So maybe he's Yes Man. I don't know what he is. But here's the same kind of a diamond logo. And we've got a Y in the middle of it. Now, if I wanted to try to draw the Y, I could just look at the Y. But if I let my mind do that same kind of cognitive shift that we did with the old lady and the young lady picture, then what I look at and begin to see is not the Y letter, but I look and see these shapes, the yellow shapes that surround it. And if I focus on drawing those yellow shapes, then let's make sure I'm on the right layer here. Whoops, that's the wrong, sorry, I'm talking to myself. There it was, okay. Then if I focus on just drawing those shapes, I can draw the Y. So I'm gonna put it on my pen here. Let's get a good dark color. Make sure that's good, okay. And I'm not going to be real careful with my diamond shape. I'm just going to kind of sketch it in. Okay, it's not going to be perfect, but I don't really care about drawing the diamond so much. I just wanted to show you what I mean. Okay, so I've got my logo, and I'm not going to worry about this inner border. Okay, I'm just going to go with the diamond and draw the Y. Well, how would I draw that Y letter? Well, first, I've got a triangle down here. So I'm going to draw that triangle. Okay, I'm going to color it in just to improve the effect a little bit. Okay, now up here at the top, I have another triangle. It's a little different. It's longer and it's narrower. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to draw that longer, narrower triangle. My pen and computer are wanting to go kind of slow here, so bear with me. Okay, now over here, I have kind of a trapezoid, basically. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to draw my trapezoid. Come down, it's going to come down like that, and it's going to go up, and then I'm going to color in my trapezoid. And I have exactly the same kind over on this side. That's going to come down, and it's going to go down like that, come up, and obviously this isn't very neat because I'm not taking my time with it. And then if I were to just go ahead and bring that line across there and that line across there and connect those ones. It's not a very good Y, but you get the idea, I hope, that I drew that Y by looking not at the Y, but by looking at the shapes. Okay, that's really cool. And then you're probably saying, well, that's wonderful, but I'm not really interested in drawing superhero logos. So how does this help me draw? Well, let me show you. What if you wanted to draw something like that? And you say, whoa, look at that. It's got tons of curves and legs. And, you know, it's just, whoa, I could never draw that shape. I would just go nuts trying to draw that shape. I gave it a little color there so it looks pretty. Well, let's see how negative space can help us draw that. Okay, now what I've done is I've cropped that picture and I put a border around it so we could see the space just a little bit better. And I'm going to do the same thing I did with the superhero logo. Now, I'm not going to be real neat because I don't have time to do this the way I would normally like to do it. But what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to focus on getting these shapes. I'm not even trying to draw the object. I'm looking at the space, the negative space around the object. So I'm going to choose, and just to give myself a frame of reference, I'm going to draw a box here. Not a very good box, but I'm going to draw a box. Let me see if I can take some of that out. Okay, go back to my pen. Okay, so let's say I'm going to start here. And I'm going to use the same kind of idea that I use in contour drawing. Is I'm looking and I'm kind of tracing with my eye, and I'm going really fast, and so this isn't going to be near as neat as it would be if I would take my time with it. But I'm drawing that shape. Okay, and I'm going to make it connect up here just so it works a little bit better. I'm going to make sure all of these little edges connect so that I can do this. Okay, let's turn that back off. Okay, let's take this shape here. Okay, so make sure I'm back on my pen. I'm going to come in. Remember, I'm not drawing the chair. I'm drawing the shape, that white negative space shape that I'm seeing. But I'm using the same idea from my modified contour drawing. I'm looking at the edge, but I am not thinking chair. I'm thinking white shape. Okay, go back here, fill that in. Whoops, that's why you have to be careful when you do that, because if you have any little areas that are not, oops, let me turn that off. Got it on the wrong thing here. This is the fun of digital art. Okay, here we go. Let me, it's not drawing. There it is. Okay. If you have any little gaps, then, whoa, I went too far. Okay, well, let me draw it again. Get extra practice. Okay, so I'm going to come around. And I'm going to come down here. Okay, make sure I don't have any gaps this time. Do a little flood fill. Okay, now let's turn that off. Come back here. Okay, let's come and do this shape, kind of a long, thin top, all down there, kind of like a flower vase that has a really, really wide brim. Okay, I'm going to come down. And make sure I don't have any gaps. Go to a flood fill. And then let's go over here. And got a real long, kind of a long tail coming in here. Down, around, kind of a little curve in. Okay, that's not very neat, but it will have to do. Okay, and looks good. A little flood fill. Okay, and then the last one. Well, not quite last because this is kind of a complicated shape here. But we'll try it. I'm going to go kind of quickly on it. Okay, and that's getting a bit sloppier than I like, but it's just so you'll get the point. Okay, so I basically used negative space to draw the shape of the settee or chair. I don't know what you call that thing. But that's the idea I want you to understand, is that you can use the spaces around an object to help you draw an object, particularly a complex object. And this works not with just a photograph, but it can work with something that you're looking at. But you've got to teach your eye and your brain to do that little cognitive shift to where you're not looking at the object you're trying to draw, but you're looking at the shapes around that object. Okay, well, let's see. Do one more thing before we close it out today. And remember, the lesson for today was positive space and negative space. And hopefully you will learn to use those in your art. Okay. Well, I thought today I would kind of revisit a chalk drawing that I like to do a lot. And it's one that I have done. It's, I have certain drawings that I do an awful lot when I go different places. And so I've done them many, many times. A lot of them I have not done digitally, though. So it's kind of interesting getting a feel for how to do some of this. Throw in some clouds here. This particular drawing is one of my favorites of all time because it reminds me of just how much God cares for me. Jesus, when he was talking to the disciples and the crowds, said, why do you worry about tomorrow? Let tomorrow worry about itself. And then he said, don't you realize that a single sparrow cannot fall to the ground without your heavenly Father knowing about it. And he said, you are more important than many sparrows. He said, consider the lilies of the field. They don't sow, they don't spin, but your heavenly Father has clothed them so well that not even Solomon in all his glory looks like one of them. See, this is why when I do chalk art, I usually play music in the background, because I've always said I can say something intelligent, or I can draw a good picture, but I can't do them both at the same time. So if I get quiet, it's because I'm trying to think about what I'm trying to do here, and I'm also trying to experiment and find the right brushes. I haven't worked a lot with this program, Autodesk Sketchbook. I normally use other ones, but this one I think works best for what we're doing in these classes, and it's also free, and so it's something that you can get if you want to do a little digital art of your own. but so I'm still in kind of a learning process of finding the brushes that do what I want and help me to draw the way I want. So that's why sometimes I kind of end up pausing and thinking and trying different things and saying, oh, nope, that's not going to work. Let's, okay, so, and that, oh, that's a blending brush. That's not what I wanted. That's what I wanted. So anyway, Jesus told not just the disciples, but there were a lot of people that were following him, and he said the same thing to them, that God would and does take care of his people, and we are definitely living in times when we want to be sure that God is taking care of us, and so I always come back to this particular drawing to remind people, hey, things at times are really scary, but God is out there, and He does care for you, and He is going to take care of you. You just have to be willing to trust Him and to look to Him as your Lord and Savior. This is my favorite part of the drawing, because I come to this, and a lot of times when I'm doing a chalk drawing, I will tend to mess with people's minds. And so I will, whoops, just bumped my keyboard there. I will maybe be drawing along, and then I'll come along with a big stick of black chalk, and I'll make that mark, and then I'll just leave it for about 5 minutes. And, people in the audience are freaking out. Oh, you just ruined it. No, I know what I'm doing. But it keeps people watching the drawing, which is one of the reasons that I like to do that. Let's see here. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I want a blending brush. Let's have that grass come up there. But God cares very, very much for us. He loves us. He sent His own Son to die for us. That should tell us something. Okay, almost done here, except for the most important part. And that is one of the things that is really nice about digital art, because when you are working with something like this, you can actually blow it up a little bit and then make things a little bit easier. Now, let's see if I can do this. Now, normally when I'm doing this part of a chalk drawing, I have a little tiny chunk of chalk that I use, and I have about maybe 20 seconds to draw this part. 20, 30 seconds, not very much. Yeah, let's shrink that down. And I don't have, as a rule, I don't have the luxury of blowing up my chalk drawing so that I can actually see what I'm doing. What you're seeing here is about the size that I actually have to draw it at when I'm drawing in front of an audience. Okay, let's just throw a couple more little color in there. Now that bird's beak is a little bit too long, but I'm afraid he'll have to live with that. So let's move the way and move that around. Whoa, don't want to move the layer. There we go. I just want to blow up the whole thing. There we go. Okay. Well, it may not. It's going to let me move the layer. So let me do something here real quick. I'll solve that problem. Just merge it down, merge it again, And then we will just, well, we'll move the whole thing. Well, no, I won't. I'm just going to shrink it so you can see it that way. Again, the joys of digital art. And because I'm working with about 20 layers here, it doesn't want to work with me. But anyway, we're out of time. I hope you have enjoyed this. And again, if you remember anything from this week, it's negative and positive space. Learn to draw by looking at the space around objects as well as the object itself. We've had a good lesson today. Next week, we're going to put all three together: line, shape, and space, the first three elements of art. So I hope you'll be with us. Looking forward to it. I've had a great time. I'm Jim Pence with See the Light, and we'll see you next week.